Life Audio.
Hey friend, Heather Creekmore here. Today we're going to a hard place this Valentine's Day. What do you do when you don't feel loved? All the commercials, all the hype and culture around Valentine's Day. What if you just really struggle? I work with a lot of women and they'll say, intellectually, I know I'm loved. Like, I know my parents love me. I know my husband loves me. I know God loves me. I just don't feel it. If that's your story, that was my story too. So today we're talking about how can you feel loved? I hope you enjoy it. Hey, if you're ready for the next step in your body image freedom journey, I hope you'll join us on the next 40-day journey. It starts in March. It's going to line up with Lent. So if you normally do something for Lent, this might be your perfect opportunity. But if you're just frustrated of kind of going around the same issue over and over again, if feeling like maybe you make a little bit of progress with your body image and then something sets you back, the 40-day journey is for you. You grab a copy of my 40-day body image workbook and we'll go through it together over 6 weeks. It's super affordable and I think it'll really bless you. So go check that out. You can go to improvedbodyimage.com and look for the 40-day journey tab. Also, if you're brand new, hey, welcome. We're so glad you're here. This show is to encourage women with body image issues, comparison issues. If you are always comparing yourself to others, you're in the right place. If you're always comparing yourself to the you used to be, you're in the right place. So go to improvedbodyimage.com. We got a blog there. You can check out the 420 some other podcast episodes, and I think you'll find everything you need to encourage your heart. Now let's get to today's show.
Okay, friends, it's Valentine's Day weekend, and we're supposed to be culturally in one of two camps. We're supposed to be savoring the love we have with someone and celebrating it, or we're supposed to be wishing that we had that kind of love with someone. And I know there's a strong contingent of better off alone people out there, but Valentine's Day weekend can break even the strongest convictions that singleness is best. But love isn't what the United States commercialized version of Valentine's Day is all about. Let's just be honest about that. There's a push that if you loved, you would make reservations, you'd buy flowers, you'd buy candy, cards, jewelry, all the things. Yet I wonder how many of us have ever felt loved, truly loved, just by getting gifts alone. And maybe you do, but that's not me. See, the truth is it's hard for me to feel loved sometimes. This is something I've struggled with for a very long time. And even if all the Valentine's Day boxes are checked, it's hard for me to believe sometimes that my husband loves me. And it's even harder for me to believe that God really loves me. In fact, when Eric and I first got married, we had so many conversations about how I struggled to feel like he really loved me. I just accused him of lying, quite frankly. I just couldn't believe him. And so then I read Gary Chapman's Love Languages book, and I thought, oh, this is the answer. It's all right here. I was quite certain that perhaps the reason why I didn't feel like he loved me was because he wasn't speaking my language. I grabbed onto that concept like as soon as I read the book. I took the test, I figured out my language, and we tried to incorporate intentionality to speak each other's languages. And you know what happened? Frustration. Frustration is what happened. I thought maybe I took the test wrong because though he was trying to do more quality time, I still questioned if he loved me. We added some words of affirmation because maybe I was two languages, like I was bilingual, and it still wasn't enough. I analyzed my parents' love languages, like maybe I needed more physical touch, maybe I needed gifts, maybe I needed acts of service. Was it possible that I could just be all the love languages? Is that what my problem was? But it was never enough. I felt stuck. I felt like it was too hard to believe that he actually loved me. Truth is, it wasn't until I sat in the counselor's office, probably 5 or 6 years into marriage, and heard the counselor say the words, "It's obvious just how much he loves you," that I was finally able to start believing that maybe it was true. Now, intellectually, I knew that he loved me. I knew that God loved me too. Neither God nor my husband had given me any reason to doubt their love. But I did anyway. I had enough self-doubt, questions about my worthiness, and noise in my head asking me the question, am I really lovable? That they didn't have to do anything at all to cause me to doubt. So what I thought would be interesting today was just to talk through what some of the obstacles are to us feeling like we are truly loved, and how we can shift our thinking or our outlook so that these obstacles can be overcome. And the place I thought I'd start as I was preparing for this episode was with Google. I decided to check out what culture teaches on this subject. If someone who doesn't know Jesus is having a hard time feeling loved, what are they told to do? What I found was really interesting. Almost every list of what to do began with self-love. Loving yourself so you can feel more loved by others. This has become a pretty common thought in our culture. Maybe it's something you've heard. Maybe it's something you've even believed. So one resource said it like this. They said, it's hard to believe someone could love us when we don't love ourselves. Truth is, friends, there's even like a Christian song that kind of says that sentiment, and it makes me cringe a little bit. But like, I get it. Like, to some level, I get it. It's hard to believe someone could love us when we don't love ourselves. Like, okay, I can see how you would come up with that statement, but it's entirely bogus. Because if this is true, then it will always be impossible for us to accept God's love. It will always be impossible for us to accept the gospel message that a God who knows just how truly awful I am deep down could love me anyway and send his only son to die for me and cover my sins. Like, no, I can never love myself enough to make that message make sense. In fact, the only way to make it make sense is to get to know God more. And some may say, well, I can believe that God loves me. It's just the other part where I get stuck. You know, I challenge that too, friend. There's a scripture that talks about something similar, 1 John 4:20. It's a famous verse about there being no fear in love. I'll read it here. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he is a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. Now, I'm doing a little reversal here. It's a little twist on what we're talking about. But if you can't love your brother whom you've seen, you can't love God whom you haven't seen. And so I wonder if the opposite, the reverse, isn't also true. If you don't believe the person that you share a bed with or work with or go to school with truly could or should love you, how can you believe a God whom you haven't seen can love you? Just food for thought here. The feeling of wondering if anyone really loves me is often linked to our inability to believe that God really loves us. So this was culture's first suggestion for the Googler who doesn't feel loved. Have more self-love. The other problem with that, though, is self-love always leaves us feeling empty and hollow. Self-love literally only works if you keep your eyes on yourself. As soon as you start to look at others and see how they are living or what they're doing or what they're not doing, comparison sets in, as does doubt as to whether or not you are as good as you actually have convinced yourself that you think you are. So the only way self-love stays is if you can keep all your focus on you. And what often happens in these cases, so think about narcissists as perhaps the one end of the spectrum here. The more focused you are on yourself, the harder you become to love. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. You feel like you're hard to love. You work on loving yourself. You succeed. You fall in love with your own reflection, kind of like Narcissus from Greek mythology. That's what happened to him. He fell in love with his own reflection and rejected all other lovers. And then no one can love you because you can't divert your gaze from your own mirror. Like, this is just real talk here, friends. So But for most of us, this isn't the problem, at least not in this obvious of a way. But put your seatbelts on here, because maybe in a subtle way, this is part of the problem. We've been so indoctrinated by this lie of culture that we kind of want to get our acts together before we can believe anyone would love us. When we gain a couple pounds, we've let ourselves down. We've broken our own imaginary rule for how we should be in this life. And then we let that perceived failure take us to a place where we believe our husbands would reject us. We think things like, if I'm not happy with me, then there's no way he could be happy with me. And then our head starts spinning, right? Then we take that little thought, he can't be happy with me because of this extra weight or whatever thing you are hung up on. Insert your issue here. He can't be happy with me because of this. And then we apply that thought to every one of his actions over the past few weeks, or maybe if you're a better memory, more historical person, kind of like I am, past few months, even years, right? And we do this. We say things in our head like, oh, I bet that's why we didn't have sex on Friday night, because he noticed the issue, the extra pounds or whatever your issue is. Oh, now I know that's why he didn't tell me I look nice on Sunday morning. He thinks I've gotten fat or too skinny or whatever it may be. Oh, I bet that's why he was so focused on watching the game this weekend and he didn't want to spend time with me because he doesn't like the way I look anymore. So we create our own thesis and then we go back and scientifically prove our thesis, or maybe to keep it in a science analogy, scientifically prove our hypothesis to ourselves without actually ever involving our test subjects. Let me be even clearer. What if the truth is that your husband didn't want to be intimate on Friday because he had a really bad day at work and stress zaps libido? What if he didn't tell you that you looked nice on Sunday because he was already worried about having to see his boss again on Monday morning? And what if he was just truly really into that game and totally oblivious to everything else going on around him? What if it's not about you at all? And then, friends, what happens is we convince ourselves, we get so spun up that we're not loved, and here's the evidence. We put the jury out there and we make the verdict without ever calling any witnesses. Now, the only reason I can talk about this, friend, is because I've done it. So hear nothing but grace for me in all of this. But I wonder if sometimes we don't feel loved because of this ridiculous trial in our head that we follow and listen to me here. That we believe more than we believe the truth. So let me dig even a little bit deeper on that one. I talked about this in a marriage series we did last February, a series called Marriage in Your Body Image. But if your man is always telling you that he loves you or thinks you're hot or beautiful or pretty or attractive, whatever word he uses, and if you're always arguing with him, that's not true. You have to say that. Oh, no, you didn't see this part of me. You're kind of telling him that your opinion is more important than his opinion. You're kind of calling him a liar at worst, or maybe at best just insulting his taste or invalidating his opinion. And the noise in your head is given more credibility and respect than your actual man. Just food for thought there. So one way we can feel more loved is to not love ourselves more, but perhaps to stop these narratives that play in our heads and convince us that we aren't enough to be loved or aren't worthy of love. Now, I don't want to oversimplify this. Like for some, maybe most of us, digging into the why behind this narrative is the first step for stopping it. But going that deep may require you to seek help from a Christian counselor or therapist. There's a good chance that whatever is really going on with the person you want to love you now goes back to a person who didn't love you well earlier in life. Or let me rephrase that, who didn't always love you well, which pretty much means we're all eligible to have this struggle because none of us had perfect parents and we know no perfect friends. We have no perfect coworkers. We've long been with broken people. And as broken people, we will always struggle to love perfectly. So let's get back to the main topic though here. How do we feel love? I think just being aware of what you are doing when you trust the narrative in your head or the lies in your head more than the truth of your reality is an important first step. Now, I'll be clear. I can't tell you that your husband always only has pure motives and never struggles to love you well. I can't tell you that every time you feel like he's not loving you well, it's because you just made it up and it's all in your head. I wish that was true, but our men are never going to be perfect either. And there may be seasons where he's struggling too. But I will say that the same applies to him. His struggles are often deeper than what you see just between the two of you. His struggles go back to his brokenness from the past. I've recorded 2 amazing episodes that are coming up within the next month with my friend Rosie, who runs a ministry for women whose husbands are addicted to porn. So know, friend, that if that's where you're at today, there's help coming on those specific fronts. You are seen. I know it's hard, but it's not about you. For now, let's get back to how you can feel more loved. Now, I told you how I went to Google to see their answer on how to feel more loved. And one of the recommendations on the list was actually to volunteer. I mean, at face value, I think that sounds kind of strange. Why would you volunteer if you want to feel like your husband loves you more? But the strange reality of how we are wired is that when we give, we are more able to receive. And although culture and marketing kind of teach us this take, just become beautiful and they'll be the one everyone wants. And then you can sit in your house and just have praise showered upon you. Like, that's a really horrible way to love and feel loved. In fact, all you have to do is look at Hollywood to see that this method falls horribly short. When 2 beautiful people who are used to being loved and admired get together and then expect the other person to love and admire them like their fans do, it usually goes bad. That's why I think if you watch carefully, those celebrities who get married to people who aren't famous tend to have better or maybe at least longer lasting marriages. Another thing that gets in the way of us feeling loved is our own perfectionism and idealism. I talk about this in my book, The Burden of Better, and it's a really good section, one of my favorites actually, so go check that book out. But in addition to deciding that no one could love us with this extra weight, or no one could love us until we get our lives or appearance together, or whatever that hang-up thing is for you, we can also decide that love has to look a certain way. Now, where in the world would I get an idea that love has to look a certain way? I'm kind of joking here, of course, but culture all around us teaches us what real love should look like, right? Especially around Valentine's Day. We learn that someone who really loves you should fill in the blank here. I was watching a Hallmark movie over Christmas, and the romantic lead man goes to the love interest's home and finds this Christmas tree ornament that her grandma had made, and it was hiding somewhere in her basement, and he gives her that for Christmas, and it's like this amazing sentimental gift. It's so thoughtful and touching, and she loves it. And at the time watching this, and I'm thinking there's no way, or not a high likelihood, let me put it like that I was going to get anything amazingly sentimental from my husband for Christmas. But then as I continued to watch it, I kind of thought, you know what? If he went down to the basement, we don't actually have basements in Texas, but we both grew up on the East Coast with basements. But if he went into the basement and found some old ornament that belonged to my grandmother and tried to give me that for Christmas, I'd be like, dude, you should have gotten me a gift card. Like, you dug this out of the basement. How would you think this is a good gift? I mean, I'm just being honest. I see so many scenarios like this where, because it's done with the right words and the right lights and the right clothing, it seems so very romantic. But real life, I found, does not match television's picture of romance. But I also think that television's picture of romance doesn't match God's. And then perhaps because we try to be more like the couples on TV, we limit our ability to experience real intimacy and feel real love. If we define love the world's way, if love means he wears the right shirt and buys the right flowers and says the right things and he doesn't do or say those things, we feel let down. Real love is action, but it's not the action we're shown over and over again in TV and movies. Back to the book of John, this time John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. Again, the ultimate picture of love here is Jesus, who laid down his life for ours. But there are ways that we are loved by our spouses or can love our spouses every single day that include these sorts of mini deaths. What about laying down your opinion of how the dishwasher should be loaded? Could true love be laying down this life that you love so much to give your spouse some grace and space to be different than you? Just throwing that question out there. Love makes everything better. That's what we're told. And if you have to sacrifice, you should probably look for someone else to love. But that's not what real love is. And again, I'm not talking about putting up with abuse here, so please be clear on that. But I wonder if sacrificially loving our spouse could mean for us to lay down those feelings that we don't feel like we're good enough or worthy of their love. And instead of sitting there, just sitting in that feeling of, I don't think you love me, kind of Eeyoring it, what if we just moved forward and tried to love them well? Maybe for you, it's feeling like if God really loved you, he would have given you a different body type, a different body size or shape or ethnicity. Or if God really loved you, he'd have sent you a spouse by now. Or if God really loved you, he'd help you get that job, or he'd help you get that body, or he'd help you get that house or whatever it may be. There's an amazing quote from John Piper, which says this, and listen carefully. The ease with which the human race presumes to tell God how he should love is breathtaking. There's only one way to know how God loves me. Listen to what he tells me and believe him. Whoa, that made me pause. That we presume to tell God how he should love us. Wow. Anyone else feel a little stunned right now? But let's go back to Piper's lessons too as we close up today. There's only one way to know how God loves me. Listen to what he tells me and believe him. And maybe beyond that, I'd like to add, it's listening to what he tells me and doing what he tells me so that I can see his love in action and all the while believe him. As I've written in my books about comparison and even body image to some extent, you can figure out what you love by what you feel like you couldn't live without. In many ways, this also exposes our idols. What is there in your life that you feel like if I don't have this, I'll just be ruined, or my life will not be a success, or my life will not be what I wanted it to be? When you answer those questions, you start to reveal any idolatry in your heart. But to another extent, my friend, it also reveals what we truly love. And sometimes I wonder if we don't have a hard time feeling loved by God and by others in our lives because we have other secret things we love more. I think about the commands in Matthew to love Jesus first and then to love others as we love ourselves. It's hard to think about others as much as I think about myself. It's just too natural, too easy to think about my own wants, my own needs, my own desires. And to take this full circle, the more I'm thinking about me, the harder it becomes for me to love you. And the more disconnected I feel from you. I want to blame you. I want to think about all those things you didn't do. I want to focus on why you don't love me or why you don't love me well. But really what I'm thinking about is me. So as we close today, my friend, my challenge for you this Valentine's Day weekend or whenever you get a chance to listen to this episode is to consider how well you are loving others in your heart. I don't mean serving others or doing things for others. Most of us are always busy doing that. But what's your heart in all of that? Are you serving out of obligation or out of love? Are you giving out of obligation or out of love? Are you loving without the expectation of something in return? Or is your love conditional? Are you secretly hoping that if you do this thing, then the response will be what you desire? Friends, I think when we struggle with approval, we do that a lot, right? If I do this thing, if I look this way, if I do and act what you want me to do and how you want me to act, then you will love me. It's the same sort of thing. And none of this is easy, my friend. But I do think the better we learn to love others, the better we become at feeling loved ourselves. And so to conclude my story, I think it's easier for me to believe my husband loves me today because I don't spend minutes or longer a day thinking about how and why he doesn't love me. I don't get caught in the trap of meditating on his missteps or overanalyzing what he didn't do or didn't say. Now, it has taken years of practice, okay? But it's so much easier to be married and enjoy marriage and feel loved when you aren't caught up constantly questioning how the other person feels about you. And if you're not married, I can take that one step further to dating because I know I did the same thing in my dating relationships. I was constantly analyzing and questioning. And dating is a time where you should be asking questions to make sure this is the person you want to continue dating or maybe spend the rest of your life with. But consistently doubting or overthinking about things that they didn't do or didn't say can just drive you to crazy town. So as we close today, I want to read the lyrics to you from one of my favorite songs. Okay, I love this song, but I love the song because I think the lyrics are just really, spot on. It's written by John Mark McMillan and it's sung by David Crowder. It's been around for years, but I'm hooked from the first line. And that first line, you're going to know what song it is maybe instantly, is God is jealous for me. God cares enough about me to be jealous. I don't know, does that not startle you? That startles me. He loves me so much that he cares how I respond to him. He doesn't want to share me. He doesn't want to share me with my idols or my other vain pursuits. He loves me too much to share me. Anyway, I'm going to read the lyrics for you. Here they are, and I hope they minister to you today. He is jealous for me. Loves like a hurricane, I am a tree, bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us all. And he is jealous for me. Loves like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us all. And we are his portion. And he is our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. If his grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. And heaven meets earth like an unforeseen kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way that he loves us. Friends, I really hope that that blessed you, and I pray that you have a blessed and beautiful weekend or whatever day you're listening to this. And most of all, I pray that today you can truly know and feel just how loved you are by God. Even if you feel like you're all alone today and you're not sure that anyone loves you, know that he truly, truly does. Thanks for listening. I hope something in today's show has helped you stop comparing and start.
Compare To show is proud to be part of the Life Audio Podcast Network. For more great Christian podcasts, go to lifeaudio.com.